So let's talk about feelings. Emotions are complex and mysterious. There are at least 6 major theories that attempt to define what emotions are. None of them seem quite right by themselves, but they do seem to suggest some things that are helpful to consider. Emotion, then, is a feeling either stimulated through thought about incoming stimuli and rendered as a physical response, or it's a physical response to a stimuli, and then that physiological event is interpreted as an emotion, or it's a combination of those two, or it's a response to other people's faces, or a combination of all of them. But it's most likely much more than any of them. As far as I know, no one knows exactly what emotions are. But whatever they are, most of us know them when we see them. And a great number of us can spot real emotion versus fake emotion very easily. And it's the fake emotions or the display of inappropriate emotions that make for some really awful theater. So let's talk about how to work with emotions on the stage. To do that, I want to look at 3 sites of emotion in the theater. The 3 places where we find emotion are character, audience, and story. Let's start with character. Almost all characters in realistic theater have emotions. The trick is deciding which emotions are revealed and which are concealed at any given time. And beyond that, deciding what exactly is revealed when emotions are concealed. This is something we see in everyday life all the time. People hide or disguise their emotions in an effort to control what the other person sees about them or thinks about them. But those attempts often fail to completely conceal the emotion. Sometimes the attempt to conceal actually reveals what's underneath. So your job as a director is to monitor the emotional output of the actor to make sure it's appropriate for the moment. But more than that, you have to make sure the actor is deriving the emotional revelation or concealment based on the action of the moment, which is tied to the character's needs in that moment, versus the other character's wants, plus any other amplifying effect, such as high stakes, obstacles, physical conditions, etc. Again, everything is tied together, but all things must be considered separately. Now let's look at emotion in the audience. Looking again at Aristotle's definition, particularly the final part where he says, incidents arousing pity and fear wherewith to accomplish its catharsis of such emotions. Catharsis is the purging of emotions, the letting go of emotions. Well, who lets them go? Well, most people believe that Aristotle is talking about the characters on the stage, and I think that makes the most sense given that he's describing what he's seeing happening on the stage. But others have argued that Aristotle was thinking about what happens in the audience when they see those emotions portrayed on the stage. And so the audience lets those feelings go. They believe that this was some sort of civic function to purge unwanted and bothersome emotions from the populace so that civic order could be maintained more effectively. It could be. But I I doubt that would have worked very well in practice if that was indeed what was intended. But it's useful for a director to consider what the audience is likely to feel at any given time and any given moment of the play. Because the audience's feelings as an observer of the story rather than a participant is critical, especially in live theater, where the emotions of the audience can be perceived by the actors on the stage, creating a kind of emotional feedback loop. So, how does that work? If a character is sad, is the audience expected to be sad? Not necessarily. Sometimes the audience is rightfully satisfied when a character is sad. Sometimes they may think it's funny. So, how do you manage that as a director? Well, you are the audience in rehearsal. You have to use your own honest judgment about how what you see makes you feel. You have to judge whether the emotional output is appropriate, whether it's to scale, whether it's properly revealed or concealed, and whether it is honest. You have to judge whether it is born of action and the character's need and situation. That is just one more reason a play needs a director. And now a brief note on emotion of the story. Every story has an overriding emotion. That's why we often talk about stories being sad, melancholy, dark, happy, sappy, joyful. The director has to understand that there's a through line emotion to a story and use that as a gauge against which to measure the accuracy of the emotions of the moments that make up the story. Because it's that through line, that spine of emotion that creates the emotional arc of a given story.